things. It is. Whew, what a day it is indeed. So well then, welcome one and all for wherever you are watching this, from whoever you're watching this. This is sort of a, well, not exactly impromptu, because I actually planned it a little bit, early, but oh well, it is what it is. Anyways, this is a creators roundtable, or whatever's left of it, shall we say, from back in the day that we used to do for Elite Dangerous and its community and so on and so forth. I'm sort of today's yours host, Yamiks. I'm joined today with ObsidianAnt and Exigeous, as we will be discussing a little bit about the first year and its retrospective of Elite Dangerous Odyssey, the new era, the biggest ever update that Frontier Developments released, and how it has turned up or turned out, shall we say, and sort of look back at the year past and what has been accomplished in our own side of things and as well as in the game side of things. Well, I suppose we should start. In that case, well, to give the co-talkers, shall we say, some word, for the folks who haven't followed Elite Dangerous that much, let's just start with simple introductions quickly, shall we say. So I see Exigeous being on top, so I'll just go.
Hi, quite the introduction there, Yamiks. That's a little hard to follow, but hi guys.
Just do it yourself.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. Hi everybody. It's been a while since a lot of you guys have heard me. As those who are sub to my channel may know, I kind of stepped away from the game right when Odyssey launched. We'll get into that here in just a little bit as to kind of why personally I quit. Quit's the wrong word. I guess it is the right word. But why I walked away. But yeah, I'm Exigeous. I focused on tutorial content for a long time. Always, if you guys have seen my channel, I always tried to be very, what I'm not when I live stream, very clear, concise, very to the point with tutorials. So, I loved it. There's still things I love about the game. Again, we'll get into all that in a little bit. But yeah, we'll talk about what I've kind of moved on to a little later on too. And with that, I'll pass it over to who I'm sure needs no introduction, the great and powerful ObsidianAnt.
Oh, thank you, Exigeous. So yeah, been a while since I've streamed. I streamed a little while, a couple of weeks back now, but kind of miss the old regular streams, as Yamiks kind of mentioned there. Kind of felt a bit sad when he says the few of us that are left over remember the old days when we used to do these creator round tables regularly, and good old days.
Who are you?
Things have changed. So, kid, what's going on?
Who are you?
Who are you?
Yes, Obsidian.
They know who he is. They know who
but
he
just
is.
in case, for the new...
Oh, okay. For the new ones, I'm ObsidianAnt. I used to exclusively live stream Elite Dangerous, but over the years kind of expanded a little bit onwards and streaming other games. So I'd like to focus on space games and flight simulators.
Yeah, you're doing a lot of
I
Microsoft
think
Flight
we'll go
Sim
back
these
to
days. Is that
yeah,
right, Ant?
Yeah. It's quite a bit of flight
Yeah.
simulator, but also other, space games. Like to have a look at a bit of everything.
Expand the horizons now that we'll get into it. And I suppose I should introduce myself as well. I'm gonna be more acting as a moderator hopefully today and talk less, because people seem to not really like my voice, including myself. But regardless, I am Yamiks, a Latvian, well, shall we say, a piece of shit who critiques comments and then on everything that is possible, basically beating the dead horse that is Elite Dangerous and more. But overall, I today tried to organize this thing, and we actually had one more co-talker or co-host, shall we say, planned, but last minute he had to sort of deal with real life, unfortunately. But I'll try to echo his sentiments as well as a few others that I got comments from. And for the creator roundtable, well, yeah, we're kind of trying to represent sort of the YouTube side of things, creator side of things, ones that used to be, ones that are, ones that sort of got disheartened, shall we say, and or those that continue, kind of, or at least as much as we can. So yeah, there you go. Well, as I said previously, we'll just get over a couple of topics and so on and so forth, or sort of, topics basically, and just sort of recap this year that has been for Odyssey and what it turned into. Before we start, any comments?
No, I think we've got a little bit of an outline that Yamiks has got for us. I think it's great.
Right.
Yeah,
The outline. Those that are looking forward to. I'll try and segment the discussion to topics and so on and so forth. So the first will be a pre-release, the portion before Odyssey released. Then we'll just skip over the little bits about the release that happened. We did a creators roundtable on that as well, and Exigeous was present there as well. So it'll be interesting to see what has changed potentially, and then after that quick recap, we'll get into the whole year and what happened in it. After that, if we got a little bit of time left, we'll talk about the future of the game, what has been announced or what we expect, and a few extra little things. Maybe pluck some comments from the chat or something like that, but we'll see about that. Anyways, so, as I said previously, let's get into pre-release. So, setting the stage, essentially, the Elite Dangerous Odyssey, at least before we knew Elite Dangerous Odyssey was Elite Dangerous Odyssey back in 2014, and even before that, as ObsidianAnt probably can actually comment a little bit more, Elite Dangerous developers did talk about, in Kickstarter days specifically, more about the potential to walk around. So, actually, as somebody who was part of that period in time in Elite's sort of development and community, what did you think of the space legs that they kind of insinuated, or at least implied?
The space legs that we got, or the space legs that they implied back then? Which one?
What they implied back then. What was the sentiment, if you remember?
It's a funny time, because for a lot of people who were around back then, 2012 was the early days when they were just talking about it. There was obviously a lot of excitement, because many of the people there had wanted a sequel for Elite for a very long time. So whenever something like that happens, it's always, anything that the developer does or doesn't say is always tied up with what people's hopes and expectations and dreams for any game are going to be. So there was definitely a big lot of hype there, and a lot of that was what people were hoping for and expecting. So if you think back on those times now, and some of the stuff you will hear about it's mixed up with that. But there was definitely quite a bit of talk about how Elite, from the developers from Frontier, how Elite would evolve and how it would develop over the years. And am
I hearing, Ant, that really from the start the expectation was always that space legs would come, and is that, and second part, is that also something the early on the community always wanted? Like, was that the same? Was that the case back then?
The way it seemed to me back then was that it was very much a mix. People knew that the idea was to build Elite, a foundation for Elite, and then expand upon it. Frontier encouraged that sentiment, that idea, and there was ideas such as atmospheric worlds, landing on atmospheric worlds, the ability to land on planets, which obviously didn't come with the release of the game, and of course, walking around, that was mentioned, specifically the ability to board other players' ships, hide yourself on board other players' ships. There's archive footage of Braber mentioning that. I do remember, though, there was also a forum post, and I'm pretty sure, I can't remember which developer it was. It was one of the designers of the time. Again, this is going back to 2013 times, where they specifically mentioned the ability to walk around inside space stations and shop fronts. I remember them mentioning storefronts as well in one of their forum posts. I'm trying to get out in a minute, and perhaps we can put that quote on screen. But yeah, Space Legs has been discussed all the way back, pretty much right from the very first days that Elite Dangerous was discussed. So
okay,
not a new thing.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it wasn't new. I was, I didn't jump into the game until early 2016. So, I wasn't
jumped
part of the
a year
Kickstarter back then.
Earlier, yeah. So
Okay.
that period between when Exigeous jumped in, it was 2015 when I picked up the game. I think it was April or something like that. Basically, and the game was really interesting and so on and so forth. And as you get into the community and so on and so forth, you start to hear, oh, hey, you're piloting the spaceship from the first person, blah blah blah, which was very immersive. Well, what about the space legs? And I think, yeah, all right, fair enough. That would be pretty nifty, if you will. But well, at the time I wasn't watching exactly the old Kickstarter implications, but there was still a persistent wish that we would one day be at least able to walk about aboard our ships, the cockpits of at least the bigger ships, and at least do that much. And even the old 2014 launch trailer implied, well, kind of it, at least that pre-rendered footage, that wonderful stuff. So there was that sentiment in the air. It never left, and then Exigeous comes in.
Yeah. Okay. So early on, there was always kind of sounds like I got two things there, and there was always the expectation. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but there was always I guess that's right, that they were talking about that would be part of the game. And did I also hear that even back then the community was fairly split on wanting it? I mean, I've always been pretty vocal about the fact that I had no interest in space legs, and I always was, as you said, I was always far more interested in atmospheric worlds. So it really kind of has never changed, has it?
Yeah, I think back then it was less about not wanting space legs or not wanting, atmospheric planets, and more the order that the content should come in, because I think there was generally expectation that all of it would come at some point. We won't be 10 years down the line and still waiting for stuff. It was more a discussion of what should come first rather than what should and shouldn't come at all. So, yeah, I think their expectations were high then, and understandably so, because Frontier obviously committing to Elite again after it being away for a long time. People had grown up with it, so the whole nostalgia thing. And don't forget, that was the whole Kickstarter days. There was the what other games were there? There was the can't remember the company. The guy who did
something Imperium.
Well, help! I think
Cloud.
I was about to say Star Citizen was
before
in
Star
Kickstarter back
Citizen.
then too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but Elite and Star Citizen were
16.
about the same time, weren't they? Someone will probably remember in chat the guy behind Monkey Island and all those games. They kind of started it all off from Kickstarter.
No Man's Sky. You're not talking about No Man's Sky.
Back before that. It was about February 2012. I think it was. God, I can't remember.
was
so frustrating. Can't remember the name of the company.
It got 2 million on Kickstarter.
That was the one. Yeah, it got about 2 million on Kickstarter, and it was like exploding onto the scene. And after that, everyone started doing Kickstarters, and Elite followed on about 8 months down the line after that.
Would even say that Elite actually started its Kickstarter because Star Citizen proved to be that, at least interesting. I mean, sure, they basically launched a month apart and so on and so forth, so there probably was some sort of not exactly collusion, but behind the scenes things that each knew about each other, sort of. And after examining the history of Space Sims, which I did specific videos and so on and so forth about, I actually realized very quickly that that sort of a space sim resurgence that happened in 2012 was mostly because of Star Citizen, and Elite basically followed up as, hey, this market is, it's proven hits, and there's literally just one other guy doing it, so hey, let's get into it because we have a title. And they succeeded tremendously, I would say.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's my view of the history.
Sorry, Yamiks, interrupting you there. So someone in chat just mentioning Double Fine and Tim Schafer. That was the
yes, there we go, Double Fine. Yep, exactly. That's the one.
Totally went out my head for a moment.
Yeah, several in chat said that. So thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, and awesome. I don't remember that. So also, did I just hear that literally Elite and Star Citizen both launched Kickstarter? Did you just say within a month of each other? I guess I didn't realize it was that close.
If I remember correctly, originally, technically, Star Citizen launched its own crowdfunding site. It literally went down on the same day, but Kickstarter came in like a day or so later, or on the same day. I don't remember exactly how it was. But literally in less than a week, saying that, hey, we have our platform, maybe use that while you get your thing back online. And that's when Kickstarter for them launched, which was October of 2012. 2012, yeah, if I remember correctly, the month date, I don't remember. And then on November specifically was Elite.
Yeah, both very, very close together.
Yep.
Interesting. And now here we are basically 10 years later with both games not fulfilling those promises, both games in very different states of not completeness. Interesting. All right.
It certainly is interesting seeing this development, especially it sort of marks the new, I don't want to use the word generation, but it kind of feels almost like a new generation of game development. We've literally lived through partially the games as service plague that basically modern games tend to get into a lot, and some of them are just getting off finally after the proven hits that are Elden Ring and so on and so forth. But there are still executives that think that, hey, pay-to-win games are smart. Mostly China, but that's a whole different
I was going to say,
topic.
from a monetary standpoint, you could certainly argue that they are or can be, right? But from the end user experience, I think that we all agree that, I think there are games that do pay to win correctly, and that don't. We can certainly debate how Star Citizen handles it, but I don't think we're here to debate Star Citizen today, are we?
You okay, fair enough.
No. I mean, not that it's off limits. You go and say no. That's
but it's still pay to win. Anyways, continuing on then, quickly skipping time from 2016, more or less, when Exigeous jumps in to 2021, when we got the first announcements of Odyssey. I know it's a big time skip and so on and so forth, but we need to keep on time, sort of, at least I'll try.
Well, really, the only thing that happened in there, Yamiks, that you're not the only thing to mention even would be Horizons, right? Beyond,
in the middle of that,
really,
Horizons, the failure
and
of
Horizons was only
Beyond,
Planet.
the drought in between that, so it was a bumpy period, shall we say. Right, the stage is set. Imagine, one day you're waking up, which I did. I look on Reddit and see a trailer. A trailer that suddenly is about space legs. And the interesting thing about the pre-release of Odyssey was that the announcement trailer accidentally got published. And
I remember that.
Every news article site that had a pre-scripted, the post
embedded,
they were just hammering and just up in arms and just running about. It was pandemonium, and boy oh boy, the hype got real. The game got its biggest bump in player resurgence since Horizon's release. I saw, at least on at the time, on Steam. So it really got really interesting. Do you guys remember?
Got a lot of attention all over the place.
Yeah. Any particular experiences from your end? Because I could talk forever.
No, go ahead, Ant.
Yeah, I think at that particular point, it seemed like after a long time of Elite being in quiet mode, what was it, 2 years, a bit more, in 2021?
About that, I think.
Yeah, we had about 2 years
middle of 2021. Yes, it was.
Very little content or anything actually from Frontier for about 2 years. It just suddenly felt that everything was coming back to life, and I think in large part due to the reaction you just mentioned, Yamiks, the massive upsurge in interest from people who'd never even played Elite and all the media interest. It seemed like Elite might have just been going up to a next level, to be cliche about the term, but it felt like it was finally going somewhere beyond where it had been.
Because at that point, when the thing is with Space like Addition, essentially what Elite started to become was from a niche but a relatively decent hardcore game. It seemed that it tried to approach the more casual player, that everyone can play, because FPS games are probably the most simplest types of games to pick up and play, except maybe for driving games or something. So yeah, that was kind of interesting that, hey, this sort of a niche genre is trying to, sort of get into that more casual environment and potentially attract a lot more, interest from everyone around, which Star Citizen, to a certain point, had already almost cornered it. So yeah, it was kind of catch-up moment, I suppose, but nonetheless, people were interested, very interested in that.
Well, it just popped into my head for you guys both. When do you guys feel, I don't know that peaked is the right word, but when do you guys, maybe that is the right word. When do you guys feel like your channels and videos and streams and stuff had the most interest? Because for me, thinking back, it was around fleet carriers, right? When fleet carriers launched, I think I remember almost hitting 2,000 on a stream back then.
That one.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that was a whole story in of itself. But it seems like from there till the Odyssey launch was kind of the peak of everything: player involvement, views, again, viewers on streams, and and since then it's obviously tapered off dramatically. Did you guys feel like the same experience?
Yeah, definitely. A huge amount of interest back then. Although for me, it was kind of happening around about the same time as a big upshoot in interest with Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah, fair enough. Because that was
you got
see them
close
both at the same time.
Really.
Yeah, they were very close together. Odyssey released around about the same time that Flight Simulator was given all its promo material, or maybe vice versa. I can't remember which one happened first. Flight Simulator came out first, didn't it? 2020. So yeah. If that shows a point, though, even in my memory, the two are kind of blurred together because there was just so much going on with both at that particular time.
Yep.
Yeah, was Flight Sim? I kind of remembered, if I'm right, that Fleet Carriers was around like the April-May range, and I think that was right when Flight Sim wasn't Flight Sim May of 2020.
Yeah,
am I remembering that right?
Yeah, they come out around about the same time.
Yeah, chat'll know better if I'm getting that right.
Dates, but not those. So.
Well, I even remember Frontier doing some of their announcements more or less on the same day as Flight Sim announcements. There might have even been one of the same day Flight Simulator was released, if I remember.
I actually remember.
There was a big load of overlap.
Regardless what it was, I would say that the absolute peak, both in numbers on Steam as well, you can actually see it, but also in the sort of views or at least interest, for me was the big bump was obviously on the first day of Alpha, and it tapered out slowly, which was expected. But the launch was very interesting. It quickly went up, and even actually quicker, went down. And that was, I think, the peak, at least on my end. I need to go back and go through the stats and whatnot else. But that's that period between the alpha launch and the release. That was probably the biggest peak portion of Elite's lifetime.
Yeah, and again, when you say launch, just to clarify, we're talking Odyssey here, correct?
Oh, Odyssey, of course.
Okay.
2001 to 2002.
Yeah.
2000 and
2021.
There we go.
2021 to 2020. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, okay. Actually, we're getting into the alpha. Then basically, alpha comes in. So to quickly recap, do you remember and can you explain? What did you think of the day one alpha and maybe at least the first week too, since they released it in piecemeal?
I guess I'll jump in first. Sadly, the first word that comes to my mind is disappointment. But I think it was more confusion, I remember, right? Because I remember that it was very like, okay, what's actually here? What can we do? What's broken versus this is just how it is? Because there was, like always, we got so little from Frontier in terms of what the gameplay was even really supposed to be. It was just kind of, here it is. right? And so I just remember I remember a lot of confusion. I remember a couple friends, like, after I played for, it was couple days after the first alpha had come out, and a buddy was going to jump in, and he was I remember saying, well, hey, you should let me show you a few things before you jump in. He's like, oh, no, I'll just figure it out. And I was like, okay, have fun. And then like 3 or 4 hours later, he was like, okay, what the fuck, dude, what is going on here, right? Like, what is broken, what, and again, just a lot of confusion. Yeah, right. And
sadly.
I've always said that I think it's good and bad that Elite just drops you in the water and here you go, figure it out for yourself to a degree. I think that's both a strength and a weakness, but I remember it being especially bad back then. I don't know, Ant, what was your kind of main memory from then?
From the launch of Odyssey, yeah? Or just
from the alpha, from the first alpha.
From the first alpha?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think they had all the build-up hype toward it. I think my expectations and hopes were higher for it than what we actually saw. I think it was quite clear right from the first alpha the direction things were starting to go in. It wasn't looking good.
Yes.
I think probably.
Yeah, especially the first day was plagued with server issues. I remember Exigeous being very angry about that.
Well,
and I kind of remember that too, right? And I remember some of it's to be understood. And I don't remember the specifics. Maybe somebody in chat will, right, of what was going on those days. But okay, it's an alpha. It just launched. I mean, shit's gonna break. I mean, it's an alpha, right? But yeah, you're right, Yamiks. I remember it being particularly bad, and like you couldn't get in, or is that what it was, that we couldn't get in and it was crashing right at launch?
There was also some of the which I felt design issues. In the first alpha, the only way we could travel around was with these space taxis.
That's right. Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
And that just sent alarm bells ringing to me. That just sent alarm bells ringing.
Yes. Well, okay, with Apex, I remember, and now that you're saying that, I remember when we were starting to get information from that, and we'll talk a little, I'm going to later, about the kind of behind the scenes stuff. I remember when we first got that, thinking about, well, how is that going to work? Before they told us it was going to be like a ship that you would fly, and it was like, well, are you just going to teleport? Because surely you're not going to just sit there for 10 minutes watching the game fly you somewhere. Like, I literally remember no, there's no way.
It wasn't so much about the taxes itself, but rather their thinking. What thought process went on that led them to thinking that was an okay idea or a good idea. And if they're thinking along those sort of lines, what does it mean for the rest of the game? It just sent some alarm bells.
For clarification, you had to sit in game and have it run while you are being transported. Because if you quit the main menu, well, the ship, in wherever it was in the Super Cruise, it would sort of drop out and then resume once you are logged back in. Yeah, that was the first week of Alpha. Basically, it offered only the on-foot experience and that traveling thing. At week 2, they gave the small ship. I think it was Eagle and Sidewinder or something like that, and then. Third week, it was everything unlocked, your account was copied, and the fourth one was basically the same thing. But the only thing that they didn't show in Alpha was engineering. And I remember specifically that day, and I think last time when this round table happened a year back, Exigeous, I remember I think I even mentioned and kind of poked fun at that your old quote during Alpha. Well, we don't know if we saw 90 or 9% of the Alpha. Yeah. So it's I don't know.
That's right. It was, you're absolutely right. Because it was, okay, guys, how are we going to evaluate this, right? Have we seen, and it turned out we had seen, I mean, not 90%, but a large percentage, or, certainly where things were thinking and going, right? And I also remember the thing that was so, again, what were they thinking? And you guys remember the system that we started in, how one of the stations was, what was it, like 300,000 light seconds away or even more, right? Yeah, so it was especially brutal to do anything, because it was like a 30-40 minute Super Cruise flight that, as you said, couldn't
that
log out
a system with the furthest travel distance, didn't they?
Yep. And, well, and
Matches that
also
system.
the missions back then wouldn't tell you the distance when you took the mission, which, they added, which is nice, right? So you take a mission, and I remember there were posts on Reddit like, okay, if you're at this part of the system, only take these missions to these stations, and we, once again, had to figure that out, right? Because nobody had thought, maybe they don't want to sit for 30 to 40 minutes right after logging in for the first time. Right, because you'd literally start, oh, hey, let's take a mission and do this. You'd go get on Apex, and what? It's how far away? And I remember that was my first experience. And those early streams, yeah, that's right. God, I remember that launch day stream. Just you couldn't play because we just sat there waiting.
Yep.
Yeah, we could chat.
I remember you
chat,
logged in,
yeah.
if you managed to get in, and then got kicked out like 30 minutes later. And then when you try to get back in, and that's when the fun started. Yeah, so. I managed that first 30 minutes, and it's like, yep, that's the evening for me. Bye. Oh boy. Right. Oh,
Yeah.
Moving on. During the alpha, I remember. We can quickly comment on one, actually two specific things, and that is the first one was during alpha, people had extremely negative take on the new exobiology, or basically space legs discovery, or exploration mode, which was what was it? It was a circle matching, but with reflex. You remember that?
Yeah,
people had
Yes.
basically you have to time it correctly.
The minigame.
And you give the minigame where you need good reflexes to people who specifically probably avoid any kind of a skill-based gameplay and choose knowledge-based stuff. I remember Ascorbius specifically talking about this, and I was thinking, well, you're right. Yeah, it's stupid gameplay on its own, but just because I can manage it doesn't mean that it's desirable for that type of a player. And then it really hit me. How could they miss this? Just this principle that, hey, you have exploration gameplay that's based on knowledge, not fucking skill, and you put that in. Just what are you doing?
Well, and on top of that, if you guys remember at least the first day, if not the first several days, it was basically broken. So it was so twitchy. You had to be so incredibly precise, right? That, I think I'm okay at that sort of silly gameplay. It was also like picking a lock more than it was anything else, right? Like if that had been a lock picking mechanic,
level Skyrim lockpicking over that shit.
Yeah, not bad comparison.
Yeah, and like I'm sure you're going to chime in the same. I'm kind of curious your thoughts from back then, being I think of certainly of this group, the bigger. I mean, look what you're doing right now, the bigger explorer, right? Yeah.
You as the explorer, what was your take?
Again, it just goes back to what I said about the taxi travels. If you look at places now where people are talking about the early days in Odyssey, kind of in hindsight, you see sort of the hindsight comments on the forums or on Reddit, and you see Frontier even mention it. I think it's important to understand there's a distinction between all the troubles that Odyssey had at launch. There was the technical troubles, which I think most people are willing to talk about, and even Frontier themselves will say, it was all the technical troubles. We'll talk about that later. But there was also the design issues, and that's the stuff that
we're going to talk about those too.
A lot of people don't see it all blended together. And I think for me back then, that minigame, the exploration minigame, looking for the plants, was another sign of Frontier's thinking. If they're doing this and this is what they consider exploration to be, is there actually going to be any exploration content, or is that it?
Yeah. And actually, just a question along that line again for you specifically, and how much of the xenobiology? Hell, I can't remember the name of it.
Exobiology.
Exobiology. Thank you. How much of that have you personally actually done? Do you have any real? I'm assuming you're not elite in that, or am I wrong?
I've done none. I barely play Odyssey. I've got no interest in any of it.
Yeah.
I barely touch Odyssey content. I've really got no interest in that. I've said it before.
Yeah. Okay. I think I don't think I've ever turned in anything at the Xeno thing, or at the xenobiology thing. Literally, I don't think I have ever done it.
it's spectacular. And the funny thing is also that during alpha they did realize very quickly that basically everyone hated it. Like nothing I've ever seen hated in Elite's community, literally. And they quickly got the message. They removed that gameplay, replaced it with just scan this plant, go literal kilometers away, and scan another plant like that, and do it another time for 3 times, right? And that was the new gameplay. They did say that later down the line, if we discover a better gameplay, we're gonna put it in. Well, spoiler alert, it's a year later and it's still the same. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it was so bizarre that rather than kind of fix or update it in some way, it, like to your point, Yamik, it just left, and nothing came back to replace it. It was just, well, that didn't work. Let's yank it out. And you have to wonder, although it didn't seem like there was a lot invested in that feature anyway, right? How much time in man hours and coding and development, and everything was just wasted and then just poof, just gone, right?
Oh, by the end of it,
instead we literally get just point at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we are. I know we are.
But anyways, quickly moving on then to the last piece of pre-release aspect of Odyssey, and that was realization during alpha that developers talked about it, and specifically Exigeous, this is going to be for you, that VR is no more. Whatever VR we got was the development we're gonna get for VR, and what VR adaptation did they add for Odyssey was gonna be it, and no more development on that side of things. So since you are the resident privileged goggle enthusiast, do tell us.
Yeah, yes, I mean that obviously, another huge nail, because those, I've seen several people in chat even during this talking about how it's still in a lot of ways is one of the, I don't think anymore we can call it the premier VR experience. It certainly was.
I would call it
and it's certainly still up there, right? Other than say racing sims, I don't think there's much else that gets as immersive, right? And by the way, I'm a seated VR player for those that are kind of standing, Arizona Sunshine type of stuff. That's just not my jam. But
I love it.
I think that, fair enough. And nothing against it. It's just not my jam. And so I think that while I understand part of the argument of, well, do you really want space legs in VR? Well, yes, actually, but I kind of get that a little bit. But to me, it was the cop out, right? It was, and especially given what feels like it's actually so close. Those that are VR players know that if you jump into the third person camera, you can kind of play Odyssey in VR. Of course, you can't interact with anything, you can't do anything, right? So it seemed like one of those things that was why would you not do this, right? This has always been the huge bread and butter. I've said in chat a couple times today, one of the main reasons I haven't jumped into Star Citizen is lack of VR, right? And so, I kind of get where some people would not want to walk around in VR, but you know what? There's also a huge number of us that do. I think I will also say, I guess it maybe comes down to, all this does, financial decisions and stuff. I remember putting a poll up at one point asking, how many people play in VR?
But yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of remember that it was like 20% or less like played in VR, pretty much like that was their main jam. And I was surprised it was it maybe 20%'s not right, but I was surprised it was as low kind of as it was, because again, for me, Elite is a VR game. So yeah, it was just another one of those, and we'll get to this in a little bit, like console, a little bit of,
oh boy,
why? Wait a minute, this is what the game is, right? And I've even had people, just friends I was chatting with recently that left the game years and years ago, said something about Odyssey. Well, they took VR out of it. Well, no, they didn't take VR out, but that was the perception that it left with people, right? Yeah, the same VR that was always there was there. Yeah, but people got this false, in this case, impression that VR was done, right? And while that's not true, VR was done from the sense of there was no further development on it, right? Now, I'm glad that they did just be straight up honest and say, look, it is not coming, right? Instead of feeding us BS, okay, at least you're being straight with us in that regard, which is pretty rare when it comes to them. But again, it just was such it's so close. It does not seem like this would be that much more work. Here we are a year later. it seems like that could have been something that would have helped salvage a lot of this, right?
No.
And I know you play some VR. What's your take?
Well, I think this is probably, we'll go into some subjects we'll get into later. I think there's a lot going on that Frontier, for whatever reason, hasn't discussed regarding the development of the game. And I think they'd hit a lot of roadblocks and a lot of hurdles. And we'll probably never know the reason they didn't develop VR for Odyssey. But I suspect there's probably, technical reasons and resource reasons and maybe a multitude of reasons.
Yep, yeah.
It
just seems like that's the
something
thing
went
that,
on there, and we're probably never going to know.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough.
No, we're not.
Yeah, when it comes to VR specifically, it was just basically a realization that it was dead, essentially, at that point. And the thing with VR is essentially there was no change ever since basically multicrew was included, and that was years back. So we just didn't know that it was dead. But then again, to commit as much resources to make essentially, closest comparison we have, No Man's Sky VR. I would say that would have taken quite a bit of resources from developers. So I can understand why they chose not to continue it, but it's still rock in a hard place, as they say, right? So what you gonna do? Right, moving on. Right. Actually, in the pre-release, I suppose. Exigeous, you can go into that behind the scenes stuff, because at the release it was already over by the time. So you got the floor.
Sure. So, and just quickly, Yamiks, you haven't seen, you've got some spam I don't know if you've blocked it yet or not, but yeah, okay, cool. So a little bit of the story. So, and I think most of this is, is publicly known. So leading up to Odyssey, and this must have started roughly a year earlier, they finally did an insider group. They called it the Road to Odyssey, right? And it was a pretty big group. I don't know, 30 of us or so, something like that, in that neighborhood, if I'm right.
Around about that. Including content creators that weren't Elite focused.
Right.
I don't want to give names because if people didn't announce it,
they didn't announce it.
People.
Sorry. It was easier to name people that weren't there, namely yours truly and maybe a few other ones, and everyone else was in.
The pilot. Yeah, pilot comes to mind.
So,
And so that started about a year on, and to what Ant said, it was a weird mix at first of, kind of those of us that you would expect. I think it was a good mix in terms of, kind of basically every play style was covered. You had guys from the Reddit, you had Stuart from the Reddit, you had if I remember right, wasn't somebody from the Truckers in there, or maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but you had a lot of different groups like that. And then you had a few people in the Elite community that were just tiny, like a couple hundred sub type channels, right? That were a little okay, and not that those people don't have valid opinions. But then to your point, Ant, you had a lot of outsiders, and I get that they wanted to pull in, because of what we found out that group became, they wanted to pull in, Star Citizen guys, right? Like, hey, look what we're doing, maybe make content about us, right? And so I remember from the very first message that I got, I replied back and said, this is great, would love to be involved, right? To be clear, I have one goal. My one goal is to impact the quality of Odyssey and help make it as good as it can be, right? Like I don't think I directly said that I don't care about PR or something like that, which I didn't, right? But my goal and hope was that, okay, you have finally brought together a group covering all the different play styles, all the different opinions, from, Care Bears to not necessarily murder hobos, but to PvPers. You've got kind of the whole gambit here. Awesome. This is what the game, in my opinion, has needed for a long time. And that went absolutely nowhere. If I'm right, and Ant can correct me, other than the night that right where we were supposed to get early access to the game, which didn't happen. Instead, we got I think it was about a 2-hour meeting with the developers and got to ask questions, which the vast majority of never got answered, right? We got that instead of getting access to it. And so it rather than them asking us a single question of, hey, here's what we're thinking, what do you guys think? Right? Never once, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ant, did that happen, right? It was very little, here's what you're going to get. We would get things, I remember some of the forum posts, we got like 10 minutes advance notice, right? Not a day, not a couple days, not anything, right? Just like very short. And for most of it, we got a little more than that, right? But there was absolutely no, and this is, I think, for longtime players know it, there was no, what do you guys want, right? It was still very much we know we're the kings at this. We're going to give you what you're going to love, and we know better, right? We don't need to get any input from you guys, right? And as the program went through, and that became, more and more apparent, I certainly personally got less and less interested. I think I made maybe 2 videos from, early stuff that they released. And while, to be clear, PR stuff is important, and, getting your message out is important and stuff, right? It felt to me from when we first heard about the program that, yeah, that was part of it. And yeah, we were worried maybe that's all it would be, but that wasn't necessarily, and maybe that's just me being naive, that how it was pitched, or certainly what we hoped from it, right? I remember at some point, a little further in, we all met with, I'm not going to name names of anybody at Frontier, guys, but we met with somebody at Frontier to talk about our thoughts on the program and our thoughts on everything, right? And I literally put together like a 10-slide presentation because I wanted all of my thoughts together. I wanted to be able to give them something that had concrete. Here's what's going to happen. And I remember in that is, if you don't do these things, if you don't ask the community what they want, if you don't get input from us and from other people, this is going to fail. And guess what? That fell on completely and totally deaf ears. Right, the person I met with, we went through it. It was, at the time a good conversation. I sent it to other people and didn't even get a, hey, this is great, hey, thanks, or even an acknowledgement that it had been sent. Right, and from that point forward, to me, is when I realized, yep, this is, and we all did. This is just about PR. They again, I've said this for years. They do not care what you want. Right? They think they know best. They have always been that way, right? And there was absolutely no give and take, right? And so I think for me at that point, it was, okay, well, now let's just watch along, and what are we going to get out of this? I hoped at the time we would get early access. In fact, Ant, I remember saying something to you, and this must have been, it was at least 3 months, if not 6 months before Odyssey release, saying, if we're not playing this now, we can't give any input, right? Because, if it's 2 weeks out, well, that's way too late. They can't, the only change they can make, as we talked about with the exploration mechanic, is just to remove something, right? There's nothing that's going to change.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, if you remember that, and I think that's, I'm not going to say that I predicted it was going to fail or something like that, but at the time, it was, hey, guys, if you're not listening to us, if you don't want this kind of input, and I just can't imagine, I've been a musician my whole life. I've been artistic my whole life. And I know that to succeed in something artistic, you have got to get direct, blunt feedback from people, right? What is it you want? What is it I'm doing wrong? What is it I can do better? And when you don't get that, you get where we are now.
Yamiks sounds like
sorry, no, I'm just making a joke. Carry on.
You're right, Yamiks.
Yeah. Yeah, Ant, is there, because I definitely had a few more thoughts as I get to the end here, but anything to add in there? Like, what was your experience at that time like?
You wanted to make a point about that, and you should finish your point there. For me,
yeah, okay.
I kind of saw the whole program in a different light to you. We've spoken about that before. And I know Frontier, for them, it was an exercise in PR. And from my previous experience with Frontier at the time, I wasn't
absolutely felt like it. Yep.
Yeah, from my previous experience with Frontier, I wasn't expecting them to accept much in the way of feedback from it. I think it was more of a case of them just saying, "This is how it is," and expecting us to accept that.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, look, their company, they can do what they want, obviously, right? I feel like I was trying as early as I could to say, if you don't do this, this is not going to be what the community wants, and I think I was proven to be right about that, right? So then to kind of get to the end of my little story here, not go on forever, right? So during the program early on, there were, a couple little minor leaks. There were a couple problem things, those kind of got addressed, right? Then I don't even remember the specifics here, but leading up to the release of Odyssey, there was, I don't even remember what it was, but there was another leak, and I remember at the time thinking it was relatively minor, and basically the message we got was, hey, if we can't find out what's going on here, we're just going to shut this down. And that's exactly what they did. And I think it was certainly less than 2 weeks, if not a week from the launch of Odyssey, they stopped all communication with us. Everything just ended, right? So right as we launched, like, we're all just like, we've got all these questions, all these things that'd be great to get information on, to be able to share with our communities, and it just all stopped.
Not only our communities, but educate their customers.
Exactly. Because I remember to that point, Yamiks, when I talked a second ago about when fleet carriers launched. I remember when fleet carriers launched, and I think that was when. And again, I don't want to really name names here necessarily, but this is an old guy. I think that was when Will was still leading the team. Is that right? Yes, I think that was before the new guard was on, right? And I remember that day, like, dude, I was getting messages from Will, just like, we'd have a question. Hold on, guys, let me see if you get the. And it wasn't just me, right? He was doing that for you, or for Ant, for Astro, for all of us, right? And of course not for you, right? We were getting information really quickly, and it was great because the audience was coming to us, and they had questions, and what's this going to be like, and we were able to give them answers. And the communication, I remember that day, like at the end of that, being like, wow, that was awesome. Right? Like, boy, I hope it stays this way. And it obviously didn't, right? So one of the notes that I think Yamik had on the plan, how many times have we heard, I should have gone through and tried to actually figure this out through all their messages. How many times have we heard, we're going to communicate more?
Oh no! Oh no! We can start counting now. It's gonna take a whole stream. But the point is, it's happened time and time again. Every time there's some sort of uproar, and that usually doesn't take long to be there. Their standard response is that we're gonna communicate more. Cut a few weeks later, or fucking month. That's it. That's all the communication you got there.
Yeah, we get, you get a couple streams, a couple this, a couple, I mean, wasn't there going to be a bunch of dev diaries and all that kind of stuff leading up to launch? I know there were a few, and then after, and it all just evaporates, it seems like, every time, right? It's this, it's this cycle of, okay, we screwed up, okay, somebody apologizes. I think you've even got the Braven apology on the list somewhere, right? We have stuff like that, and then very quickly after that, it's just right back to, as Ant told me, as we were chatting before this, right? They stopped the live streams again because there's nothing for them to say, right? And so
that's going to be in the cycle. Year leading up to today, but basically that. Yeah. Right. Any other things, or we can move on?
No. Yeah, I think we can.
Okay. All right. So then let's move on to quickly skim over the release period, so that we can actually get into the meat of things. Since the last Creators Roundtable was specifically about the launch, you can rewatch that somewhere on my end, and a few other creators who streamed it at that time. But in any case, now as for the release, so basically it releases, and May 19th, 2021. Elite Dangerous Odyssey releases in full. We get all the features available to us, which basically was just engineers unlocked, additionally to what we got already. And everyone realized alpha performance was also on release. Maybe slightly better, but that's literally 0. whatever percent there. That was performance. That was the feature list. That was it. Thoughts on the launch quickly?
Ant, why don't you jump in first?
On what part?
On the launch. Just
your thoughts around launch.
Full.
I think I'll end up sounding very negative. But the launch was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. We saw what was going on with the last alpha. It was a strange thing, actually. I know there was quite a bit of conversation, and again, this was something you could see on the forums. I don't know if it had happened elsewhere, but there was a certain belief from some people that the alpha release was one build, and the final release was going to be some completely different build. And this is a conversation I remember happening back during 2014 as well. Elite Dangerous was in a testing phase for about a year. It started in alpha in, I can't even remember now, early 2013, I think,
April,
wasn't it?
29th
2013,
April,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have even been longer than a year.
You mean the original game, yeah.
The original
it's
Elite
the original,
Dangerous,
yeah.
yeah. And in the end, it went through multiple phases and ended up with the Gamma phase. And the Gamma phase was basically what was going to be the release candidate. But back then, again, there was the same conversation that it's just what people were terming as a vertical slice. That what we were seeing in the Gamma was just a small portion of the overall release. And that, you know, when Elite Dangerous was finally released, it was a carbon copy of the Gamma. There was no extra content that Frontier had held back. And for some reason, the same belief happened again with Odyssey. People thought that somehow the final release of Odyssey was going to be a much improved version of the Alpha. And I'm not sure where that belief came from.
I had full expectation on performance. I honestly
performance,
put my
I
trust
agree there should have been
expectation on
improved
developers
performance.
there.
Yeah, that's different. But I was thinking in terms of content as well. You know, that we were just getting a small slice, and there was some gameplay, some mission types, some station types, some planet types, all of these sort of things that Frontier were holding back. I'm not sure. Perhaps I'm the only one that remembers this. Don't you remember these conversations
I
at the
wasn't
time?
expecting any more than that, except for engineers. So yeah, for me it was looking grim on the content side of things, but I expected performance to be at least, you know.
That's pretty much what I'm getting at anyway. What we got was pretty much what I was expecting, aside from the performance issues, which, like yourself, I was hoping and expecting would have, improved.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes, with what you're saying about like what we got and stuff. It goes back to what Yamiks was saying earlier in terms of had we seen 9% or 90%, right? And a buddy DM'd me. Yeah, well, no, I'm saying you said that about you brought that up earlier is what I mean, right? And a buddy DM'd me in Discord while we were chatting a second ago, and he said, "Remember what you were so pissed off about at launch was exactly that, right? Was that there wasn't gameplay that we'd hoped had been held back because we hadn't, seen all that much, right? Nope, we had seen it all, right? And yeah, I mean, there was more station types and things like that, which are just new kind of procedural layouts of the same puzzle pieces, right? Just like, with the fleet carrier interiors. Well, it's just the same puzzle pieces, just in a different arrangement kind of thing, right? Station interiors, there's what, 4? Or really, there's 2 layouts, right? There's the big stations and little stations, right? That's pretty much it. They're different colored, right? And so I think that's, for me, where the biggest disappointment at launch was. It was, this really is it, and it performs like shit, right?
Yeah. Well, as with the launch happened, we quickly got also literal quote-unquote apologies from Mr. Braben himself, as the development team pulled in the CEO of the company, saying, well, hey, this performance is not working, blah, blah, blah. Mostly it was performance, but the content, if not for the performance, the content would definitely be dogged. I mean, sure, it wouldn't be as horrible, on Steam and so on and so forth, but it wouldn't be reflective of the price of 40 euros, or was it $60 and whatnot. So, yeah, no.
Did it launch?
Those apologies just didn't work.
Yeah, and
well, again, I think even then he apologized for. I don't even know if he apologized for the content itself. I think he apologized for the way the game was received, didn't he?
Yeah, he basically said that apologies to who suffers from bad performance. It's like, hey, if you're stupid enough that you don't realize that on your hyper giga PC, 60 FPS of this garbage is not okay, well then, thanks, sucker. basically that sort of attitude, which is, well, I mean, okay, I'm reading perhaps too much into the political answer there, but it still is disgusting as a customer, consumer, to have that sort of attitude laid onto you. And basically how bad it was, it was so bad that the performance did not meet their own standards of officially released spec machines. That is, minimum spec machine running at 30 frames a second on the whatever settings, doesn't matter which ones, but at least 30 minimum, and recommended was 60 FPS minimum. To this day.
Well, I think, in looking back on it, for me, that pops in my head, it was also while Odyssey is arguably prettier, right? There's some nicer graphics in it and stuff. It wasn't like the performance hit that we got wasn't commensurate with the quality bump in graphics, right? It's not like all of a sudden the game is twice as good looking and so it's half the performance, right? It's like marginally better looking, right? And half the performance. And so I think that from a player's perspective was it still is the frustrating part, right? Like if I'm going to play in VR, I go play Horizons. Because the performance is so much better.
Yep, I absolutely do that constantly, yeah.
Yeah, and there are a few nice things in Odyssey that you miss, right? I can't remember, has Horizons, they haven't added the shield and hull or the shield percentage in Horizons, have they?
Nope, the UI is
like
that.
It's the same, yeah.
That indeed, yes.
Yeah, so the little stuff like that you want from Odyssey that makes you want to play Odyssey, it's in no way worth the massive performance tank you get from it if you're not going to play on foot, right? Which personally I'm not.
Yeah, even if you're getting 60 frames a second, what's the point in literally burning electricity pointlessly or your graphics card, generally speaking, basically getting just the same results? Why waste extra energy from your PC? That's my usual sort of excuse for playing Horizons, even though I rather prefer more frames, even though for streaming it doesn't matter. For streaming I prefer just simply more stable stuff. Anyways, right, so on the launch, let's see, yes, right, on the launch, of course, developers did promise to communicate more, and we'll get to that now a year later. How much of that promise did they actually come through with? And the last little thing was, well, here's my little topic, is that essentially as the Odyssey dropped, they basically spammed their store with microtransactions, the shitty skins just marked up for prices and so on and so forth, which I find particularly disgusting, and I can go into the topic as to why, but we're not here today to discuss that abusive nonsense of just nickel and diming you for a paid product on top of it. So let's get into the first year, or rather, let's skip a year later, and what do we have? Well, how about this? I'll be the positive guy today, and I'll get into the things that we received during this whole 12-month period. Right? So, to quickly go over it, performance-wise, I'll leave that, but yeah, basically it is slightly better than it is, but it's, spoilers, worse than the recommended spec machines or minimum spec machines still. So yes, it is slightly better, but it's not even barely good enough for their own standards. So that's where we're at still. However, on the good sides, they added emotes, the animations for your character that you can do, okay, which were not on the launch, and whatever, we're gonna talk about that perhaps as well later. Then they added megaship interiors and fleet carrier interiors, finally, and then there was story, I guess, in the background in Horizons as well. The Azimuth saga was going on, but Obsidian, as somebody who is probably more inclined for the story aspect of it, of us three, your thoughts on the story in this period?
I've not got a lot to say about that, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, moving on then.
The time I've really enjoyed the story for Elite Dangerous was when there was a lot of lot being a lot being a relative term, but when there was more in-game content that was reflective of what was going on. So like when the Thargoid puzzle and then the Thargoid bases.
Yes, that was the active
the
period,
Thargoid hyperdiction, all the rest of it.
Yeah, that
So,
was the best time. Absolutely. That
the
one
Azimuth
moment got me
saga,
interested.
it could be the best thing ever written. And I hate coming across too negative about it. But if there's little to no game content to go along with it, then I don't really pay that much attention to it. I know there is community goals with it. I believe there's been a few little modules here and there to do with it. But
and the dual engineered modules have been cool. Right?
Yeah, there's been
Give them credit for a few things.
there's been some extra
I
things like
hate
that.
the
But
dual engineered stuff, but okay, that's a balance issue in design.
Another, fair enough.
yeah, but for
But
me,
at least it's something that they were adding something for us.
Yeah, there
Yeah, no, go ahead.
there's different ways of looking on it. Yes, but it's better than nothing. But is that good?
Well, I
Better
mean,
than
let's
nothing
also
better than
remember
nothing
that
isn't exactly praise, is it? And
when
that's
did
not
they
a reflection on the
stop?
quality of the Azimuth saga. I'm not saying it's it's good or bad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there's nothing in the game to go, or not enough to go in the game along with it, which to me is just unfortunate.
And when was it? Let's also remember, I can't remember if it was leading up to Odyssey or after Odyssey that I guess it was leading up to Odyssey where they stopped all community goals for like, what, a year? We didn't
it was
have-
a couple of
It was
months.
about
I
that,
think
wasn't
at
it? At least
least.
that.
Was it? Okay, was it not? Okay.
I think it
Don't
might have
let me
been as
exaggerate
close as
too
a
much
year.
then.
I'm sure it might have been up to a year.
I thought it
God.
was, right? Because one of my most fun gameplays, I've talked about this a lot in the past, is I loved PvP piracy, right? And the place to PvP pirate is at a community goal. And so when community goals stopped, like my main fun gameplay dried up, right? Because there was, it was so, other than maybe you'd find people mining, but that would be tough too, right? So it was, I remember particularly being frustrated. And I was never the type that followed the story, right? I never got into that. But to the point you guys made, I remember the first night, the first Thargoid ruins or Guardian ruins were found, right? I remember all of us rushing down there and how just incredibly cool and atmospheric it was, and especially
it still is
the high
atmospheric.
predictions.
Lovely.
It is. Yeah, absolutely, right. But the high predictions, man, I mean, honestly, the two big memories I have with this game, we all have those moments in gaming that I think we'll kind of never forget. I remember when I first started playing the game, I'd been playing only a few hours. I was playing in VR. I had my audio system super loud and just cranking along, and I get interdicted for the first time, having no clue what the hell's going on, right? And I remember just like, oh my God, this is so awesome. And the same experience with the first high predictions, right? And it's a shame we don't have those anymore, because that old high prediction cut sequence where they come from behind, it was so creepy and wonderful. The new ones by comparison are just
I think that's when Elite said it's best, when you've got when you've got that curated content. I think that's what, when Elite just works so well. They've made an amazing galaxy with Elite. They have. There's no denying that.
Yes.
And the curated content, those moments was, I don't know if you guys are into Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs.
Oh, I do play it.
It was a little bit like that, wasn't it? You've got the you've got the Galnet in form of the text, and Dungeon Master explaining the story.
Sure.
And then you've got these moments where you've got the curated content coming in, which is folding out of that story that's been set. And Azimuth Saga is just, at least at the moment, it's not that, but hopefully that's where it's going.
Yeah, when it comes to story specifically, I've been a proponent of a simple mechanic that has been part of every RPG game out there that potentially could include Elite Dangerous, and that was these wonderful things called quests. Whenever I talk with developers, or well, at least people who are, at least higher up in the chain, shall we say, whenever I had met people around those events, community events and so on and so forth in real life, the word quest comes out, and it feels like they shy away from it. They either are afraid of it or just don't know how to utilize it. But just curated quests would have added such a wonderful way of storytelling and giving players something to either replay or just simply experience the galaxy in a curated way. But no, let's not utilize that, and to this day it's still not there. But that's just my anyways, that's a tangent regardless. Story-wise, the bottom line is why I put it in. It's mostly a joke because it really is nothing. Elite's story, really, it only peaked with Targoids because actually something happened besides stupid fucking text in Galnet that you can't observe in-game, or stupid fucking text that is read out to you in a decent, and sometimes even good, voice-acted way, which is slightly better. But that's it. And that's kind of the problem with the Elite story, that it really is just it feels like literally somebody is telling you about the D&D game that they had where you were not part of it. That's how Elite story feels like. So there you go. That's just
it does on its own until you have those other moments of content, like we were talking about just now, the hyperdictions, the Thargoid bases, the Thargoid machines. I think all those sort of things add to it immensely. I'd like to see more of that.
Yeah. Stuff that you can actually go and do or replay. Those things actually add to the experience. Imagine that. But anyways, a year later, as I said previously, we got the emotes and megaship and fleet carrier interiors. Now, the interesting thing that and of course now you can also sit down on chairs as well. I forgot to write it in, but anyways. Right, these features I kind of would expect on the fucking launch. Right, so first things first, right? This is my biggest pet peeve kind of on the launch. You have fleet carriers, which are designed to be player-made or player-organized fucking big ships for other players, right? So you would think this social device feature would feature a social hub, which is basically a station interior. It didn't on the launch. And what more, in the social hub that was the station, whenever you got into station, all social activity that you could do was look at someone, crouch, and move about. Not even jump. You couldn't sit down on anything, and most of all, emotes were not there. Honestly, it boggles my mind. How could they be so just, I don't know, dismissive or rushing or whatever they were doing not to include social activities for the social hubs that they designed to be for social stuff. It pisses me off even today, year later, thinking about it. And now that we've got it added finally, it's basically a bit too late, but better than nothing, I guess. Don't expect a, clap from me, though. Anyways, any thoughts, guys? If not, moving on.
I think it's reflective of just the whole Odyssey situation. It just feels to me as though there was no overall plan for Odyssey. It was just kind of clumped together.
Almost
there's no one global, vision for it. At least that's what it feels like to me. There's just a lot of things missing. A lot of poor decisions were made. A lot of mistakes were made. And I know, people, as I've seen some people in chat, I think we're kind of hating on Elite and hating on Odyssey, but, if that's how you see it, then call it like you see it. That's what I always say, and I just feel
Wake up,
that's
sunshine, this is reality.
Yeah, I just feel that's what went on. There was I don't know. Did the Odyssey change project managers halfway through, or did it change designers? Who knows what went on? It just feels as though it was not carefully orchestrated, not carefully planned out. The lack of emotes, you say, are a great example. Creating a social space without the ability to sit down. Creating a social space without the ability to emote. It goes back to the earlier ideas that we mentioned.
Fucking hell.
The mini game again for the exploration. It doesn't match what exploration is about. The taxis where you're in them for ages. It just all feels
not player focused.
Not well thought out.
You're playing an NPC. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, as you were saying all that, Ant, it popped into my head what happened with, and this might be a little divisive, but what happened with the Star Wars franchise, right? It seemed pretty clear that leading up to Episode 9, there was no pre-plan for Episode 7, 8, and 9 and what that whole story was going to be. right? We get 7, which is basically New Hope. You get 8, which is its own completely different thing. Love it or hate it. I hate it, but love it or hate it. And then 9, which just retcons all that and just kind of goes back. And in the same vein, it just seemed like that things like that weren't thought all the way through. Right. Or again, we've talked a couple things. Some of those decisions along the way, seemed very questionable. And I'll maintain it's still because, they just don't get input from the community. Right. And by that, I mean kind of
they get plenty of input. I can guarantee.
Well, from the raw. Yeah.
They don't respond.
But again, exactly. You had this group. As I was saying earlier, I think any game would kill for the community that Elite has, right? The diehards in this community, right?
And if anybody thinks supporters alone,
right. And if people, Ant said a second ago about us being negative or whatever, and yeah, of course we're being critical. That's kind of what you do with things like this anyway, right? But if there's any doubt that the three of us fucking love this game, let's get rid of that, because you wouldn't know who we are if we didn't. Right. So I've always that's always rubbed me the wrong way. That's you hate Elite or whatever. And, I find those comments so incredibly ignorant. Right. Because if I hated this game, I wouldn't have spent the thousands of hours playing it and making content for it, and interacting with the community like all of us have done. Right. So, I've said this so many times. We are critical because we love it. Right. Not the other way around. Right. Just to get that off my chest a little bit.
I always kind of felt that was quite obvious, but
sadly, sometimes you have to point out the obvious.
Yeah, best saying, doesn't it? It should be obvious, but
okie dokie.
Yeah. But just to be clear, right? Like, yes, we're critical because we love it.
Anyways, there is actually one thing that I forgot, quote unquote, to mention as the last feature that genuinely felt like a post-launch feature. Content that was given to the players. Exigeous, since you haven't, followed up on Elite Dangerous, can you guess which one that was? Or maybe you know.
I'm guessing, and I was reading chat, so I might have missed you a little bit. I'm guessing you're referring to Star Citizen and everybody moving on to that? Is that where you're going?
No. What new feature / content did Elite Odyssey get in its first year that didn't seem like it was planned on release and,
I'm not following you, buddy. Fleet carrier interiors, but I'm guessing that's not where you're going.
Nope. That was finally after what is it? 6 years? Yeah, 6 years technically since release. We got finally a new SRV.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair enough. Yep.
There you go. We got a new SRV, a Scorpion SRV. Which arguably they promised already new SRVs on Horizons. Let's not forget that they promised it, and it came from Braben himself. But now we got a new SRV, which is the only piece of content I can genuinely say that was a new content added post-launch on Odyssey. That wasn't supposed to, or at least shouldn't have been, already on the launch.
Yeah,
that's all.
I remember.
A year in, and we got an SRV. There you go.
Well, if you remember, I can't remember when it was. Maybe it was even at launch. There was all the leaks, and I remember putting out a video, kind of having predictions of what we might get, and all that stuff. On foot Thargoids and new SRVs and new ships, and to your point, we got an SRV. Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah. And it's nice to have a 2-player SRV, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, that's, that's nice to have. But, right, we still don't have, let's also talk about the things that that Frontier's always done a great / terrible job with, is adding a feature. And once that feature is there and they've checked the box, okay, we've done that. That's it. There's no, with rare exceptions of them coming back around to engineering and exploration a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Let's talk about multi-crew, for example.
Oh, no.
Which still doesn't work. Right?
Yes.
I remember, going back to that, I remember the day multi-crew launched, and we were all like, what? You can't multi-crew the SRV? What? You can't mix wings and multi-crew? I remember people, and I was very much I think this was before I started my channel. I was very much the rah happy day guy. I was like, oh guys, don't worry, it just got released. Give them some time. That'll absolutely come. And here we are, literally 4 years later, and those basic features, still don't have them.
Oh wait, no,
Right.
you're actually right. They added something in light of the new space legs. They added another space seat in the bigger ships so that you can accommodate 4 people in a ship.
Right.
There you go.
So the Anaconda, Corvette, and Cutter? Were those the only 3? Maybe the Type 10 and Type 9? Anyway, yeah. We got the extra seat.
Yay!
But still, I don't know if people are trying to use multi-crew, and it's granted, it's been a while since I tried it, but every single time I've tried it, I don't think I have ever had a just smooth, successful multi-crew experience. Right? Where it didn't crash, and then the person's, at a station way back, and it's, it's always been a nightmare for me. And for me, and I think this is another poll I put up that I was a little surprised about the results of, I see Elite as a social game, right? I know, Ant, I think you primarily play solo, is that right?
Yep, I play solo.
I play solo too. Constantly.
Okay. For me, I almost, other than when I would grind mats or something, or, something for a video or something, for me, Elite was always a social game. Right, I was always in a wing with somebody, or doing PvP, or doing something with friends, right? And so for that, for multi-crew to be as bad as it was, and for what it could have been, right, which is the experience you get in Star Citizen to a degree, right, and to have never gotten that still has always just been a big disappointment for me.
Yeah, multi-crew is quite beast, shall we say? Oh boy, that's oh boy. But anyways,
return to that first subject quickly, Yamiks, of the SRV you mentioned. Did you see on the recent live stream? Maybe someone mentioned to you about that. They had one of the developers on. I think it was the designer actually, and he mentioned that the SRV, the Scorpion, was designed years ago, and they put it on a shelf. Because when they designed it, there wasn't any...
Honestly, I'm not surprised, but the funniest thing is, folks, remember that they put the fucking new SRV, the Scorpion, as an exclusive for Odyssey. So in Horizons, you can't play it. You can't use it.
Oh, I didn't realize that, actually.
Yeah, that's also a thing, by the way. So there you go. Enjoy the pain. Oh, what are they doing? Like, just... No, I'm absolutely not surprised that Scorpion was shelled. Honestly, there are probably a few other
basically
ones,
because they didn't have... They said they didn't have suitable
you know.
content for it at the time and wanted to hold it back until they did. They're also mentioning there's other content there like that they've sort of developed and they stick on a shelf. So maybe...
Wasn't there a rumor of a mining ship launch fighter? Wasn't there a leak of some...
mining ship launch fighter has
that would be awesome.
Model. It has a model,
that would be awesome to use.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the game files. I've leaked it a couple of times. So yeah. I've even had a picture somewhere in my older videos.
Yeah,
so
that's what I thought. There. That's what I thought.
Right? There's speaking of leaks, the content that we're waiting still for Odyssey, and I suppose we're getting into the future part of Odyssey, but regardless, I already discovered it a while back. Basically, it is the Titan Targoid and something to do about it with new stuff. But we'll see whether what happens with that and that new content. But yeah, basically, this in the first year, all the new content that we really got that was not supposed to be, or at least shouldn't have been on the release, was SRV. That's the point. So, right. Quickly to move on then to, let's see. Right. In the last creator round table, Paroxyn was part of the discussion. One of the older streamers, video creators, and so on and so forth. He mentioned, we were talking about AI. I skimmed through the stream and so on and so forth. He mentions AI. And I, personally, being a first-person shooter fan, noticed a lot of issues, both in design and functionality, problems with the AI and other things of the FPS. But he specifically mentioned AI. And, he mentions that, they will fix the AI because it's still shit. And guess what? A year later now, it's still shit. And in
Let's
fact,
clarify. You mean on foot AI, Odyssey
on foot,
AI? Is that what we're talking
AI.
about? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, Odyssey
Yep, yep, yep.
AI on foot for FPS gameplay. It's shit. It truly is shit. And the funny thing is that performance actually is heavily impacted because of the AI, it seems. Because in conflict zones, when two sides are fighting each other, the frame rates drop the lowest in any conflict zone. And that's where the lack of that frame rate actually properly shows itself. That's why you can't claim that the game is running according to their standards, because that crucial part, that crucial gameplay, is still subpar in performance-wise. And once that conflict zone is done, once everyone is dead, or when it ends, one side wins, AI returns to normal, and all of a sudden, frame rates improve by a noticeable margin. So at least I speculate personally that the AI is partially to be blamed, but it's not the only one, and we're gonna get into performance in just a bit. So, AI hasn't changed, so that's the year's retrospective. Hasn't changed. Sorry, Peroxo, but here we are.
Just briefly on that, just one quick thing. I remember right as I think it was in the alpha, I remember talking with you, Ant, about the AI, and we all trying to, because I think I remember at first the on foot AI would basically see you no matter where you were. They could track you through walls, all of that, right?
Yeah.
And it going back, right, and going back and forth from just completely broken to then them being so stupid that you could just easily walk right up behind them. They'd have no clue you were there. There was no way to you think of a game at the time. I was playing a lot of Ghost Recon, right? And in Ghost Recon, if somebody sees you, you're starting to get notification. That that's happening, and there is none of that. Right, so there was just no way to know, and then it was like, well, is there a way to know that they're there, or you detect somebody, they'd show up on your mini map, and then they'd go away, and I think that's all still a problem to this day, right? It's just all so unbelievably basic, right?
Yeah, AI doesn't even seem that interesting either. So
no, agreed.
It's disheartening, frankly speaking. So.
Yep.
Here we are, basically, a year later, and, not much has changed now, has it? Oh, well. Right, right, so that was the AI, oh, God, and here we go with big drops there. Right, so we're gonna get into the really sad parts now. A year later, or rather, a couple of, months before a year rolled around, developers come out and announce, after a indefinite delay for consoles, that consoles are no longer being developed for. An indefinite cancellation is being announced. So that those that don't understand, basically, that means they are not putting Odyssey on consoles until something really changes, or, unlikely overall at all. Might as well expect.
Haven't they said at this point that it's
canceled? It basically is canceled.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought.
It said indefinite cancellation. So, what are the chances the performance is going to improve? So that is taken in as a complete cancellation. So, fun times. So
that also includes further development on Horizons as well. They get bug fixes, and I assume they get community goals, but no new content.
Right.
That's Horizon.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The only version that is being developed is PC Odyssey. So PC Horizons is not being developed either. So any Horizons.
Right.
So there you go.
And I do think it's really cool that they did the transfer your console to PC thing. That was a good thing that they did, right? I want to be fair to them when they do good stuff. And also
giving a free copy of Horizons to console players at transfer.
Yep. So that's I'm glad that they did that, right? But I think it was obviously the jaw drop of, we've been waiting with this expectation for, 6-9 months, and then just, bam. And it seemed clear that the reason was they just can't straight up make it work, right? I think there's got to be so much technical debt. There's got to be so much spaghetti code in there that it just, hell, they can't make the game perform well on a 3080, right? Let alone how the hell are you going to do it on an Xbox? Somebody in your chat, Ant, brought up Cyberpunk, right?
Mm.
Very similar situation, right? And of
Yeah,
course, they weren't
Cyberpunk
developing for the new gen consoles either, right?
Hmm.
So,
No, Cyberpunk actually turned out pretty decent in the end, wasn't it? I haven't played it recently, but by all accounts, it works pretty well now. I know a lot of people like it.
Well, working is one thing. The design and the gameplay feel is still shit. The crafting system I fucking hate. The RPG system for shooters is just horrible.
Okay.
But
To be fair, though, to look at it from another point of view, it's getting fairly decent reviews now, right?
it's getting average, but it's nowhere near
Certainly
to
better.
the hype and
no, yeah, no.
basically the level that it was hyped up to be at all. So yeah,
I mean, it's so rare for a game to recover from a launch like that. Really, the only game I truly can think of that just completely turned it around, and I'm guessing you know where I'm going, which is No Man's Sky, right?
Yep.
I mean,
there
we went from it's a scam, they're just trying to steal from you. It was only a scam forever to now it's like, holy shit, no, it was not. And oh my God, I mean, shit, 3-4 years ago, I put out a video that was, has No Man's Sky embarrassed Elite. And that was back then with, by comparison, the little stuff they didn't have VR yet. They didn't have all the mechs. It's unreal what Hello Games has done with that game.
Yeah, even the recent update, they tried recently adding in effectively, I know it's just a limited time thing with their expeditions, but it's essentially a new game mode with the roguelike elements to Leviathans. You know about that?
Interesting. Okay, I haven't followed it in a long time.
Right.
No, I don't. I haven't followed it in a long time.
Oh, right. But basically you play through on the expedition,
like
you've got a set course to go through, and if you die, you reset back to a certain point in that story of the Leviathan story.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you basically get memory fragments of the previous go-round, which you can use to restore certain parts of your previous playthrough. It's just like, all these little things that they're trying out. And I've actually got a video coming out on this. I think it shows that Hello Games are willing to take a risk.
Yes,
because, you're putting something in that's totally different. There's no roguelike element to No Man's Sky at the moment, and you're trying something that you don't know how the players are going to respond to. But Hello Games just seem to go that extra mile with it, and they make it work.
Yep. And they just are constantly, and since their release schedule is so rapid, and they're constantly bringing out new stuff, and constantly there's new gameplay, and constantly there's new stuff added, right? That it's. I mean,
those things are rather small overall. That's the thing. You
don't
need massive, big things like the Targoids jizzing in your face to actually make people interested in what you're making.
Yep.
Just small little quality of life improvements. Those things will get me just spunking left and right. I guarantee you that. But, hey, people want new ships like certain people. If you will, but whatever. Fair enough. Everyone has different strokes for different folks, as they say.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think it was before when we were chatting right before the stream started. Right. It's things like if I'm Frontier, you update, you do little stuff along the way to the point of like No Man's Sky, like give us what we now think are realistic black holes and accretion disks, right? Like why we still have these just blurry ball black holes, right? Like that can't be that much investment. You take a graphic designer and a coder, you give them a week, maybe I'm being super optimistic there, maybe it's 2, maybe it's a month, whatever it is, right? And you give us those little things, right? And while that's little, kind of like No Man's Sky has done over the time, those little impacts all add up, right? And just constantly seeing those little things makes the game feel like it's alive. Does Elite feel like it's alive to anybody listening to my voice?
Well, I'm more partial for.
I mean, right?
I'm more partial for quality of life improvements, but
fair enough, right? And even if it's that, Yamiks, right? Even if you're adding little quality of life stuff along the way, it doesn't have to necessarily be a new thing, right? Sure, right? But that's not what we get or have ever gotten, really.
I want numbers to be evened out, engineering, but
sure.
I'll be happy about a 0 being turned into a 0.1. I shit you not. Default bulkheads, mass, engineering. If you know Exigeous.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. Yes. I mean, there's so much little stuff like that, right?
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, with the console, well, returning back to the console cancellation, essentially, yeah, as you mentioned, basically they are admitting that they can't improve the performance on on PC, on everywhere, literally. Because the thing is, you have to understand really. Well, I've talked about this time and time again, so my audience probably will understand this. But regardless, the point is, because they cannot develop on consoles, it doesn't mean that they can't develop for the new gen consoles. No, because Frontier advertised Odyssey only on old generation, that is PlayStation, that Pissbox 4 and Xbone, that is the old gen consoles. They have to. Well, they wanted to use the backwards compatibility so that it could be run on the new gens. So in order to use that backwards compatibility, and that was a relatively smart way to develop a game, to save resources and code bases and blah blah blah, they had to make it work on old gen consoles. Problem, you need to develop the performance. And the fact is, they just admitted with the console cancellation, they cannot develop good enough so that it would be acceptable performance on old gens. And here we are. They're canceling that, and additionally also canceling the development on PC Horizons, or just general Horizons overall. So whatever new content you're gonna get that only on PC and only on Odyssey. So strap on in, folks. And that is pretty poor. Because that kind of leaves us in the state of just also a realization that if they can't make it run on consoles, then will performance at all improve from now on to even match their actual standards, their recommended spec machines running according to what they, said it should run on? I doubt it with this sort of announcement.
Well, the idea there with the other consoles, there's also the thought or theory, I don't know how true this is, that Frontier can't release Horizons, Odyssey rather, on the new consoles without also releasing it on previous gen consoles. And basically that comes down to a clause in the contract with Microsoft and Sony, because they've released Horizons on the older gen consoles, so they can't release an update.
Wait, hold on. So clarify that again. So in other words, they couldn't. Let me make sure I'm hearing you right, because first I've heard something like this.
Yeah,
so if they wanted to release on Xbox Series X and PS5, they would also have to release on previous gen because it originally came out on previous gen?
Yeah, I'm not sure how true this is, but it's something you do see. And
Okay,
I think I've heard there's some legal...
No, that's... for each downloadable content and so on and so forth, you can simply... It's a product. Basically, it's an add-on product, but it's still a product that you can sell later on. And generally, games tend not to split off stuff, but if they really wanted to... I think they could have actually just taken Odyssey, what it is on the PC, and port it over for the new gen consoles. However, that would mean that they would have to upkeep basically 6 code bases: PC Horizons, PC Odyssey, old gen console Horizons, old gen Odyssey, new gen Odyssey, new gen Horizons. They would have to upkeep 6 code bases.
Right, so you don't see it as a legal issue. Yeah, there's a legal contract with Microsoft.
I doubt it though. But I mean, who knows? Sony is basically just big bunch of pricks who don't allow crossplay because herpaderp pay us money to allow that on your game.
I think perhaps to put it another way is, can we think of any other game that's on, MMO or live service game that come out on the old consoles that got an update on the new gen but didn't get that update on the old gen?
Yeah, but didn't stay I get where you're going at now that you say that.
I can't think of any other game that's done that.
Maybe chat can think of something, but I
can think of only one type of a game, and that is disgusting type of a game, and that is sports games. The FIFA nonsense. And the funny thing is, I think it was Madden 2020 that actually had new features on the next gen consoles, but not the PC. If you watch Angry Joe literally rant about it, it's just, how could you just, what the fuck are you doing? But that's EA and just their disgusting Madden series and sports games overall. Just fuck them all. But that's just my.
A couple of people in chat mentioning
I guess
GTA Online and Destiny
Yeah,
as examples
yeah.
of
I
things
guess
that
where
got
you're
updated
going.
on
I
the
can
consoles
see there
rather than
being
the older ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I could definitely see there being some legal issues. Is kind of what we're getting at,
Oh,
right? And they
absolutely.
probably
Could
get
be
very
potentials.
complicated. Yeah,
No.
yeah.
But no, basically, my expectation was that they wanted to do the smart thing and get rid of one extra code base that they need to upkeep, and that's why I used backwards compatibility. Smart choice overall, considering you have so many things to upkeep. Not too hard, but still, it's still upkeep, right? But now they've decided, well, hey, instead of 4 or 6 code bases, we're gonna cancel that and just upkeep one and maybe another one if it really, really, really needs it. So here we are. So that's that's what happened this year. And there's one more thing that happened this year specifically, and I suppose Obsidian, it's more up your alley, but feel free to pass a buck.
What's that?
Well, you don't have my list there. Okay, Planet Tech. Remember that?
I missed you
Go
saying
into
something.
it.
Planet Tech. Yeah, I've been flying around on planets on stream while we've been talking. So Frontier said probably a month ago, back now, 6 weeks maybe, that they're not going to fix the current issue with planetary tiling. So this is where textures are repeating over planetary surfaces, and this was really, really bad when Odyssey was released, but was fixed somewhat over the updates since the release. It's still noticeable, it's still there, but they've decided they're not going to fix that, and the reason for that is because apparently it's going to be a big undertaking, and they'd rather focus their efforts elsewhere. And for me, that's not really a major problem. I don't see the planetary tiling as a big problem, but what I do see as a big problem is the planets now are far more bland than they were. They're much more flatter.
Absolutely.
And I think less visually interesting. Now I know some people out there, other YouTubers, other content creators, they've made some very, very good videos demonstrating some good areas that are out there. Can't think of some examples off the top of my head.
I see a lot of pictures being taken and so on and so forth.
It's not that it's all crap.
Fair enough,
it's not that it's all rubbish. It is out there.
Yeah.
But I think,
sure,
generally speaking now, it's much, much harder to find the good content in terms of planets. And I think
there's this thing. When I first dropped into the Alpha and later on under release and so on and so forth, later on you see the recolored planets as well. You see the height generation essentially losing that sort of a uniqueness that Horizons brought in. Yes, Horizons planets were a bit out there, shall we say, with the heights and drops and so on and so forth, but it was interesting to find a testicle planet, the Pomecha 2C or something like that, and maybe some artifacts as well. However, now the planet system essentially, for me at least, my brain and everyone's brains are, kind of good at seeing some patterns, and it feels like basically the planet is a sphere, and then points are basically drawn out upward, and then everything else that is around that is not drawn upward is staying the same flat shape.
Yeah, they just don't seem to have much visual appeal anymore. They're not. There's not enough variety there.
Oh, there are drops.
Yeah,
but it kind of feels like there's a distinct sort of baseline on the planet rather than it being a potato basically looking a small planet rock that you land on. It really feels like it's a smooth sphere with just a couple of vertices being drawn up or down, and that being just smoothed out.
Yamiks, to your point, it's funny you said it like literally 10 seconds after I typed it in chat. Somebody mentioned that like the big mountain at Dav's Hope is gone in Odyssey, which I actually didn't really know, but it doesn't surprise me, right? Right. And as you mentioned, what I kind of dubbed testicle moon, right? And for those that don't know what we're talking about, there's a couple moons out there that are just riddled, completely covered in literally 20-kilometer deep ribbon canyons. And so I said from a distance, it looks like a big wrinkly testicle, right? And it's amazing, right? It's by far my favorite place in the entire galaxy. Go in there and canyon running in something really fast. Like if you get a max speed Imperial Eagle, it's just, for me, totally my jam, totally my type of gameplay, right? And I get you might make the argument that, well, maybe that's not realistic because the size of the planet and the gravity would pull those down, and you would. But you know what? That's where we get to the difference between fun gameplay and absolute realism, right? You know, if we stuck to absolute realism, we wouldn't have super crews, and we wouldn't have shields, and we wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? So I think,
exactly.
again, to your point, to the point
There's
that
a reason there's a sound in space for lasers.
Exactly. Exactly, right? And I think missing those things, right, and making everything, it's not as bad as we can remember back to the Beijification of the galaxy back when that was back in before
it was
Beyond,
released,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. When everything went, no, it was from Horizons. We had some really good colors, right? It was between Horizons and Beyond. I don't remember what version, but in there, you guys remember every fucking planet looked like a tangerine all of a sudden, like a Band-Aid, right? You know, because you had all these little craters on it that, to me, it literally looked like Band-Aids, right? It was the same color. It was the same little tiny craters.
Yeah, it's not that the Odyssey planets now are bad as such. It's just that
right.
They've taken away something that they made that was really good,
very good,
and replaced it with something that's not as good. At least
people call it rightfully a downgrade, and I agree.
I think it is.
It's absolutely a downgrade.
Yeah, it's like I say, there's some great footage out there, and there's some great screenshots out there. People have found some amazing locations, but the fact is they're few and far between. And the other side of that is when Horizons come out, Frontier are really pushing the whole concept of planet technology, planetary generation. But now you see,
this is a new upgrade.
Well, you see other developers now, other games that I think they're way beyond where Frontier is with it now.
Oh, I mean, to say the least. Remember when we saw those screenshots at one point of like ice planets?
Yeah, and, those got canned quickly.
Stuff, right?
Yeah, I think Star Citizen planets are great. As much as Star Citizen gets, but the planets on that look really good. An entirely different project, of course, but you've got Microsoft Flight Simulator as well, and you see what they're doing with precision generation and
it's incredible,
large-scale tech.
Yeah.
Obviously, actually, Elite's not going to start doing full-scale Earth-likes everywhere, but it's not just that they're a little bit now behind; they're just becoming further and further behind all the time. And to see them say they're not going to be fixing the planetary tiling, that's not so much of a problem. It's more that the implication behind that they're not going to do any further work on planets. At least that's how I read it. When do the planets get iterated on again?
Hey, we know this is or at least people, feel like downgrade. Sure, sorry, we can't do it, or we're unwilling to do it because this thing doesn't bring in money or something. It's a disappointment. It's a massive disappointment. And again, for exploration, you're really just a downgrade, really. And speaking of atmospherics, actually, on top of it, right? Well, we got 5% extra planets to land on with basically a slightly, tinge on skies or whatnot else for whatever you want to call the atmosphere there, right? So the bluish sky and plants on the planets, but that's all we got. What is the point of those atmospheric planets in that case, really? In my last video that I did, I was just wondering. I truly came to the conclusion, just why did they bother even then? Really?
Well, like where Ant's flying right now. I mean, that's very pretty and to the point.
Nice.
Yeah, there's. Excuse me. Ant's flying right there. And there are the pretty places to find. And one of the things along that line that's always annoyed me is, and I get that you want to reward the explorers, right, for the work that they've gone out there to see, but there is so much arguably cool shit out there. The Lagrange lightning clouds are some of I think the most amazing places in the game.
That was a great addition. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The closest one is 11,000, if it still is 11,000 light years from the core.
Something like that. Yes.
Tiny percentage of players are getting to see that. Right. Why not tease all of that kind of stuff within 1,000 light years of the core? Right. So that you give people, you give them that tease so they want to go out and find more. Right. Instead, it's essentially gated off to what I believe, maybe I'm wrong here, but what I believe is a very small percentage of players that go beyond, 1,000 or 2,000 light years from the start. Right. And again, you want to reward the guys that do that. Absolutely. Right. But you don't want to punish the others. is what it has felt like to me.
You can take a taxi, you know. Oh wait, no, taxi's maximum range is 200 light years. Sorry.
Is it
Take
that?
you a while,
Is it that
wouldn't it?
short?
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
Imagine that.
From
Be there
yep.
quite a while.
Yep, 200 light years. That's the maximum the one taxi trip will take you.
Yeah.
Yep, fun times.
That's right.
Oh God! And that basically concludes what had happened this year specifically, and or rather lack thereof. Oh fuck. Okay, performance. Right, I did talk about performance a little bit here, but basically, those that are wondering about the performance, it really hasn't improved that much. Yes, in my investigations, I concluded that they had introduced some sort of culling system, which until the update 9 wasn't present. More than half a year later, they added most basic optimization system, or well, method. There we go, method. So it just baffles me, and obviously I concluded why Odyssey was released. Because of fiscal year, and that meant basically everything else had to be rushed out. It felt like many other things also got rushed out, and maybe that's why emotes weren't a part of it, or mega ship or fleet carrier interiors weren't out. But you know, the reasons are just up for conjecture at this point for us, but some feel more plausible than others. But as for performance, now a year later, it's still not where it should be. And I mean by bare minimum, acceptable performance by their own standards. Not just in the sense of it's not where it should be, but it's all right sort of a thing. No, I mean it in the truest sense. Oh, it's almost criminal as to misrepresentative of the product. Kind of not where it should be. Make that distinction, okay.
Before we come to an end on that, can I ask you two a question? Would that be right?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, please.
What's your thoughts then on the last 11 updates? Not necessarily the content, but you can talk about the content if you want, or the improvements, but more really about Frontier's approach to releasing those patches. Do you feel they're big enough? Do you feel Frontier have made big enough steps over those 11 updates? Or do you feel they should have been doing more? And keep in mind also the point at which Odyssey started at compared to where it is today.
Yep. Those 11 updates. Inconsequential.
Yeah, that's a pretty good word for me too, right? I mean, it's you know, I because I stepped away from the game so much, right? I think I stepped away right around update 6. And I remember, like, you know, I'd get pinged, or, you know, I'd obviously stayed enough touch to know there was an update coming out. And I don't ever remember there being an update. I think the only one that compelled me to, well, all right, let's give it a go, was Fleet Carrier Interiors, just to see, right? And I think literally I looked at it for 5 minutes and that was about it, right?
Which you could do on YouTube for the transition.
Right, exactly, right? You know, yes, I mean, look, let's be fair. Yes, it's great to see progress happen, right? I mean, you know, like, of course it is. Does it all just feel like, you know, the words you hear a lot is, you know, no, the game's not dead, it's on life support. And I think that's the way to say it, right? And it's always, all of those to me feel like the bare minimum. Right? You know, if it's not the bare minimum, I've said this twice now at least, why don't we get new little things like black holes, or like, there's a list a mile long we could all come up with. Yamiks mentioned quality of life, right? Oh. There's so many little things like that I've also said in the past, imagine if tomorrow was your first day at Frontier and you were the game designer, or you had some level of input on the game. Think of how long the list you would have, and all these little things that seemingly, right, and I don't want to, you know, belittle how difficult technical changes are, right, but so many little things that could be done and could have been done over the years that would have made big impacts for just little things, right? And we didn't see any of that really in those 11 updates, right? You know, we talked about the major features, what, emotes, an SRV, ship, our fleet carrier interiors. Is there anything I'm missing? Other than, again, and how many times are they, Yeah, how many times is it, performance updates or optimizations, right? Well, okay, like that's all we quote unquote get, and it seems like each of those is a 1% step forward.
I think
Right?
for me,
maybe I missed
what they
what they
did is they improved the game for the people who were already happy with Odyssey. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. That's a great way to say it.
For the people beyond that, I'm not sure if they really achieved as much as they perhaps could have.
Yeah, I
And
don't
that's not to undervalue the
great way
amount
to
of work
say it.
that perhaps went into them.
No. That's right. But I don't think there's
someone's worked on them, and someone's probably spent a lot of time on them.
Yeah. And there's nothing. You're right. There's nothing in those updates that if you were skeptical about Odyssey, or you weren't sure if you were going to jump in, or you weren't sure if this was your jam, there was nothing in those 11 updates that would change that.
But for the people who were already happy with Odyssey, I expect they'll probably see it somewhat differently, and we're probably quite happy with them.
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. Right.
That's my take. But personally, I'm not a fan of Odyssey, so the updates didn't give me what I wanted to see. But I can see how someone who does like Odyssey probably felt. They've brought a lot of improvement over that time. So.
Yeah. And going back to the comment I made before about us being critical because we love it. Look, if you are loving Odyssey, fantastic, right? Like there shouldn't be. I mean, I don't want to say you're stupid or anything like that. If you're loving it and you're having a great time, fucking fantastic. Awesome for you. And I don't mean that condescending. I don't mean that any way other than genuinely, that's great, right? And I hope there are people listening that do feel that way, right? And obviously there are some, right? I think sadly it is a minority, or at least that's seemingly been the opinion, right? But if you're loving it, awesome. I certainly don't want to be shitting on you or anything if you're having a great time with the game, because there are parts of the game that I still very much love, right? But just to say that real quick.
Well, I never care about whatever somebody feels. I'm just always about hey, this thing sucks because of X, Y, and Z, and no, it's not because I like it or dislike it. So I try to deal with the more fact-like stuff.
Evidentiary.
There you go. Basically, why the design is bad and
that's right.
Grind and so on and so forth. It's a good old dead horse, if you will.
That's right. You're trying to give concrete reasons and evidence behind why
disregarding emotional feel. There we go.
Yeah.
So there you go. Right. Well, it's basically been 2 hours, so yeah, we probably should start already with the ending, closing thingamajigs. So I'm just gonna run over a couple of things that we didn't mention, and oh gods, I completely forgot to include a little bit of Ascorbius's thoughts here. But basically, actually, this ties in perfectly with the final sort of a question that I'm gonna give you guys to answer as well. But I'll read Ascorbius's first. So the final question basically is, what do you think happened with Odyssey? And now, with a year later, what is happening with it? And to read off Ascorbius's message that he left before he had to, run off to his stuff to do, was basically that. Let's see. He thinks, or at least his argument, that the reason why Odyssey was so bad and unfinished, unpolished, or bad in state in general for content as well as performance and so on and so forth, was that he speculates, of course, conjecture, that they lost the code base, the code for part of the game that they had to restart, and he speculates that sort of what we see of Odyssey on launch when it was a year's worth of development. And yeah, it kind of feels like it, doesn't it? Despite the fact that we know that they worked on it during Beyond, which makes for 2-year development already. And I personally argue that it was actually 3 years already in development, because I think they started Odyssey development during already the last stages of Horizons, which makes the 3-year sort of a period at least. Which kind of makes you question, well, what did they do for the 3 years to bring this, really? And sure, Ascorbius might be right, saying that, hey, they lost the code base, but then that didn't show up in investor reports, it didn't show up anywhere in the public, and if they are hiding that fact from everyone, as a publicly traded company, either which way, it's not a good look. and you can always postpone. So I highly doubt it. And also, it kind of also, sorry, Ascorbius, but it shifts the blame from actually people being, well, either malicious or stupid, Hanlon's razor, basically, of pushing out Odyssey, what it was, away from them just being stupid or malicious. It's just outside thing. And yes, I understand wanting to give benefit of the doubt to developers, but I remind you of another game that basically did even worse. Anthem. They had 4 or more years to develop that fucking thing, and they were fucking around, according to Kotaku report from Jason Schreier, okay? It is fully possible. In fact, it is more often possible that the company that both publishes and also develops a product just decides to fuck around or has no leadership. And in this case, as we've seen what the Odyssey has done, or Elite in general has followed a certain MO, it feels more likely, for at least myself, that it just was either incompetence or malice, which I would say incompetence mostly, from the developer publisher, that is Frontier Developments. But Ascorbius, who knows, might be right. They maybe lost the code. So, guys, as a final finishing thoughts again. So I guess Exigeous wants to talk. So, what
no, please.
What do you think happened? And what do you think happened on the launch, or how this happened in the first place, and what happened during this year in your sort of a take, I suppose? Why do you think this little amount of work had been actually done?
It's so hard to speculate, and I kind of don't like speculating.
Let's just throw it out for the
you asked.
Ending,
You asked, so I will. First of all, I was chatting with someone in about a little bit of this, right? I don't buy that there's malice, right? I don't buy that.
You always should apply incompetence rather than malice. That's the
right, exactly right. So I don't buy that. Kind of like back we talked about No Man's Sky a little bit, when people would say, that what's his name, the guy, the head of Hello Games,
Sean Murray.
That Sean was, actively lying, and he was trying to scam people. No, I think it's been proven that he was excited about what they wanted. Yes. And he just overspoke, right? And I think that the same thing here, in the sense that I don't believe that Frontier has done something malicious, right? I think I would need to see evidence of that. I think if you want to talk incompetence, I think your example of Anthem is a good one, in that, is it possible they go down these paths? I've talked a lot about them not getting real input from the community. And by that, I mean, like, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you think of this? A back and forth kind of thing. And that you get down a path, and now you have to scrap it. We talked a lot about the exploration mechanic that was just scrapped, right? So I feel like potentially a lot of that happened, and then by the time, you get to release, and, the expectations don't pan out. I mean, I don't know what their finances are like, what their sales is like. We all could see what their stock price did, at launch. If I'm remembering right, for those that don't know, it literally halved right at launch, right? And I think those kind of internal financial pressures are potentially, hey, this is bringing in enough money to keep it on life support, and do what we can do to, keep enough people playing and keep enough people buying skins and buying arcs and that sort of stuff, right? That it seems to me that that's where the game has gone, right? That the financial incentive for there, and I think in a little bit of fairness, it is an 8-year-old game at this point, right? It is hard to bring in whole new group of players as a new thing, and that's what they could have done with Odyssey. It didn't happen, I think, pretty clearly, right? And so if I'm right that those numbers are where we would expect, that their incentive going forward is difficult, right? Where do you put your resources? Do you put them toward, new games and new stuff? They've got the F1 game coming out. They've got, the publishing side.
Next one after that, another one.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly, right? And so it probably, I have to think that the bean counters are going, look, guys, this makes a lot more sense And we need to take these guys that we're going to spend their time and resources and either move them over here or just boot them, right? We just don't need that resource anymore because it's not making financial sense anymore, right? And, you know, if I'm right about that, it's hard to fault that from a business perspective, because at the end of the day, Frontier's here to make business. They are not here to make us happy. Hopefully those are one and the same, right? And they certainly can be. I think Star Citizen has proven that, right? That, you know, you don't have to have all that.
Question mark.
You're still making a huge amount of money, right? Where, you know, maybe Elite and Frontier just isn't. So I think if I had to speculate, that's probably where I would go. Ant, what's your take?
I think.
Yeah, actually,
it's
basically the. Oh, sorry. Okay, carry on.
Yeah, no, I think honestly we'll never know what happened or what went wrong.
Oh,
I think
clearly.
there's 2 points of looking at this. The one way is, you know, we're in the here and now, and what's the use of looking back? We need to look forward, and that's something we haven't touched on, which is, I've been talking about that quite a bit this year. What Frontier is planning on doing, where's all their information? What are they talking about? And now we're kind of in a position where we can't say that, because Frontier very clearly announced their plans, what they're doing with their recent roadmap, which is basically they're focusing on 2 small updates, 2 updates,
wonderful
12 and
segue.
updates 13.
Explain us about the roadmap, yeah, please.
Yeah, relatively, perhaps a decent update 14, which will be story focused, and then next year they're focusing on overhauling what they called, I think it was a core gameplay feature.
It was
a
single core feature.
Yeah, it was singular, not plural.
Key,
I think that's
no, it
important
was
to
not
keep
core,
in mind,
but
wasn't
key
it?
feature.
Yeah,
key feature.
Key feature, yes.
Yeah.
The singular, not plural. So one key feature, whatever that may be. So I think it's important to keep in mind there that what that roadmap suggests is they're not doing huge volumes of work on Odyssey going forward, and we should expect to see more of what we've had over the past year. And I think that partially ties into what we saw with Odyssey and what we mentioned previously, is there's two sides to it. One is the design problems, which we've mentioned throughout this stream. I think there was a lot of design issues, and we never know why that is, but it just seems that there was no one really in charge of focusing on the direction for the game, and if they were, maybe it changed hands halfway through. To me, it just does. Odyssey doesn't feel like 3 years worth of development. Yeah, if it feels like
no, it does not.
If it feels like a lot less than
it
that.
does not.
Yeah,
it does.
So
it does.
Whatever went wrong, maybe Scorpius is right, and they had development problems. Maybe they lost
Seems
some code.
so unlikely, though.
Yeah, it's
I
unlikely.
just can't believe that.
But for me,
I think it's more that they lost the staff.
I think
then
something
I
happened.
believe that they
But
lost
we never
the
know
code.
what it
Well,
was.
they absolutely
Something
lost all
happened.
the staff that knows how to deal with this engine. That's for sure.
Right.
And that resulted in 2 problems. We had the performance issues, and we had the design issues. So, to me, that's just that pretty much sums it up. There was no real guidance for where Odyssey, what it was meant to be. So that you could argue that's poor management from the top, or poor management from production. I don't know
Lack
where
of
it
understanding
is.
your
It
own
just
product.
feels, it feels to me as though there was just no unifying vision for the game. Very much feels like that.
Absolutely. Story is alone a good example of it.
Yeah. And I think it's, like I say, resources probably factor into that, and the roadmap they recently revealed comes into that, because it shows that Frontier are pretty much limited in the way they're viewing Odyssey and how much they want to commit to it in terms of development. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I've got no problem with that, because I think Frontier are very clear now with what they've committed to for the next year, to the next 18 months. They've clearly let everyone know what to expect and what to not expect. And it's very clear that we shouldn't be expecting huge volumes of work going into Odyssey going forward. And I'm fine with that, because Frontier are clear with that message. It's not what I personally agree with. It's not what I would like to see for the game.
Yeah.
But,
Sadly, Elite is 6 year old. Well, this year, 8-year-old game. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's getting
investing
on.
in something like that, unless it's a Team
By the
Fortress, and even
by the end of
you know,
next
look at
year,
Team
it's
Fortress,
coming on for 10 years,
unlikely.
isn't it? And don't forget, Frontier did say
Yeah,
that
it is. Yeah.
they said many times that Elite would have a 10-year plan. I'm not saying it's coming
Yep,
to an
they
end,
did.
but they won't go beyond
I mean,
that.
yeah,
But they
the
did say 10-year
10-year
plan, and we're closing in on that.
10-year
So.
plan is sort of a business talk of,
A lot of games
we
say it,
plan.
yeah.
They
Yeah,
said
yeah,
10-year plan for Anthem, man.
They also, and they've said the same for Microsoft Flight Simulator. A lot of companies say
God.
it, but either way, it ties into the game's age. It's
Yeah,
getting
I
on.
suppose so.
I think Star Citizen's got a century plan. Is that Star Citizen's
This year
plan?
it celebrates
Release.
10 years
All right.
since its Kickstarter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just had to make a little jab there.
Yeah. Oh, the only question I personally still kind of want to know, just for out of the morb curiosity, shall we say, for the memes. I do wonder how many developers are actually working on Elite now. Let's not forget that back in beyond the days when they were in parallel, or for mostly working on Odyssey development, they had 25% working on Beyond stuff, and then the rest were doing for stuff for Odyssey. At that time, they claimed to have around 100-person
Yeah, working on it.
staff.
Yeah.
I wonder how much is it now.
I mean, it's got
That's a thought that
small
we can leave
fraction of
you
that.
on a little bit there.
Yeah.
So I suppose actually I suppose we can end this one then.
Yeah.
No other comments? No.
No, yeah. You're good.
All right then. Well, I'm just waiting for Obsidian to also sound off because he's always so fucking quiet. Anyways,
That's just because you're,
Well,
so,
hey,
you're
you
so
know,
chatty, you two. How many developers do
been
I
good.
think
He's
we've
been
got?
good.
They've got. I don't know in terms of numbers, but I don't think it's very many. I really don't think they've got very many.
it's going to be an interesting.
Yeah, I don't think they've got
I
many.
highly doubt they will ever reveal it, but you never know. Right. Well. Anyways. Well, that's been basically the year in recap, and frankly speaking, actually, on a positive note, I suppose, in the end, for the 1-year anniversary, they, for the first time, actually did put Elite Odyssey on sale. Imagine that on Steam. So that was the first time they actually got a sale. So there's that, but other than that, really, the year has been, frankly speaking, a highly disappointing one for basically the whole community overall, because the player numbers are at literal all-time low, and that's been the case since the 3rd month of release.
Yeah.
So yeah, and performance hasn't really improved to even the point where it should be, and content is really near non-existent, frankly speaking. So kind of a sad note to end on, I suppose, but it is what it is. Anyways, I suppose from yours truly, that's about it. And massive big thanks to Obsidian and Exigeous for coming along, and big thanks to, of course, all the other ones that couldn't make it, and blah blah blah, if you will. But for now, that'll be about it. I would like to say I'd hope to see you next year, you the viewer, or well, you my fellow creators, but well, as Exigeous already has shown, that's easily broken, right?
Yeah, right.
You need to be more active, damn it. Okay, but no, on the bright side, we're all here for each other. That is me as a content creator, or we as the content creators, for you, the community, and hopefully you, the community, are here for us. If not, each one of us specifically. So, thank you for watching. Thanks for enjoying and commenting and all the wonderful things. So, I personally will bid you adieu. And,
yeah, if it's okay, Yamiks, I'm going to plug one quick thing. If Ant said he didn't mind, I'm guessing you don't mind. Just a little plug on what I'm doing, guys. Oh, I see Scorb showed up in I don't know if you've been here the whole time, Scorb, but I just saw him pop into Ant's chat. Anyway, one quick thing to plug, what I've been up to. If any of you guys out there are sim racers, I'm starting a little project, little company. I might do a Kickstarter for it in the future. It's called Sim Effects. If you guys don't mind, I'm going to post the URL in chat. Basically, it is immersive hardware for sim racing. So it's a modular system that does brake ABS rumble simulation. It does wind simulation. There's notifications. There's timer systems. So if there's any sim racers out there, especially in the UK or in Europe, because I'm past the prototype phase, but I'm still early enough that I'm looking for some early testers. So if you're a sim racer out there and that sounds remotely interesting, have a look at the site. You can ping me there with any questions, and I'd love to hear from you. So there's my little plug. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okie dokie. Well, that's about it. So,
Yeah,
guys,
thanks everyone
stay
for
strong.
coming along and watching.
Yeah, this is great. Yamiks, thanks for putting this together. And yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
I
This
had
has been a
to
lot of
beat
fun.
the dead horse one last time before everything's gone, you know. All right. Well, that's about it for the official part. I'll see you then next time, and we'll see each other probably around.
Yeah,
So
catch
take care,
you soon, okay?
Have a good weekends and all the other things out there. Stay safe and best of luck.
Bye all.
Bye.
Great. Thanks again, guys.